estimates and projections area of the population division at the Census Bureau. And she's going to run through how those estimates are produced. That includes things like the methods, the types of input data, including some that come from the state of Tennessee. She'll talk about also the various vintages that are released throughout the decade and the different phases of release. So there's a series of releases that start in December and go through June. She'll walk you through all that. So look forward to that on November 29th. All the details are on our website. As far as today's presentation goes, before we introduce Tim Sarko, who's a data dissemination specialist with the Census Bureau, who's going to be doing the bulk of the work, I wanted to do just a couple of housekeeping things. The first is that we are recording. Well, Erin, are we recording yet? If we're not recording, we will.
Yes,
recording has started. So we are recording this webinar, so there's always a few people who aren't able to make it. If you decide that you want to share this with someone later, we will be posting this on our website and also emailing you once that recording is available so that you can go back and view anything that you missed. Please feel free to share this with others in your organizations or networks. During the presentation today, we're not going to be using the chat, but we are going to ask questions through the Q&A feature, which should be in the menu bar in your Teams window. So we're going to let Tim go all the way through his presentation, and then, but while we're talking, feel free to throw a question into the Q&A, and we will circle back after Tim's done and get him to go through those questions. Then the second thing is that Tim will do the presentation, we'll do Q&A. Then after that, just a reminder, we've got kind of really short flash style presentations from myself, from Randy Pullen from Chattanooga, and from Aubrey Weiland from Knoxville-Knox County Planning, who will just do some short demonstrations of some ways that the API can be used in other types of work. It's a very flexible sort of tool, so we want to let you see some ways that it's being used here in Tennessee. With that, I'm going to introduce Tim Sarko. Tim is, I want to say kind of filling in because Ron Williams, who was our former data dissemination specialist, has moved over to CEDSI, which is the group that produces data.census.gov and manages the API. So Tim is the data dissemination specialist that covers Ohio and West Virginia. And so he's kind of temporarily covering Tennessee and Kentucky as well. So maybe this will be permanent. We'll have to wait and see, but we're lucky to have him today because he does handle some of these API presentations through the Census Bureau's national webinars. And so we're lucky to have him. And I'm sure Tim will share his contact information at some point here. But if you like what you see today, be sure to get in touch with him and schedule some training for your organization or group as well. So Tim, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Take it away, sir. It's all yours.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
We got you.
Okay. Today I'm going to talk about the Census Bureau's Application Programming Interface, the API. The objectives for today, I'm going to speak a little bit about the American Community Survey, and then I'm going to talk about find available data sets in the Application Programming Interface and how to edit a sample URL to access the data you need, and then to view results in your web browser and save your result as a .csv file and format it to a readable format. The outline for today, first I'm going to talk about the American Community Survey, basically because, and I'm not going to go into any great detail of the American Community Survey because most of you, or probably all of you, are aware of the American Community Survey. But some of the demonstrations that I'm going to use with the API involve the American Community Survey. And then I'm going to talk about Census API basics, how to build an API request, then I'm going to do an API demo, and then just some resources for learning more, and then any questions that you may have. The American Community Survey is the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data source for local statistics on critical planning topics such as age, children's, veterans, commuting, education, income, and employment. It does survey over 3.5 million addresses, and it's responsible for over $675 billion in federal government spending each year. Covers over 40 topics, supports over 300 evidence-based federal government uses, and it produces 11 billion estimates each year. And it's important to know that it's released twice a year as 1-year estimates. Those are for populations of 65,000 or more, and as 5-year estimates. Those are for basically all populations. These are the data topics from the ACS. So you can see they're broken down by social, demographic, economic, and housing. So if you look at social, for instance, if you wanted to know, for instance, what's the educational attainment like in your city or town? How many grandparents are caregivers for their grandchildren? What languages do people speak at home? And then we have any number of demographic, economic topics, such as what industries and occupations do people work in? How did they get to work? How many people have health insurance? And then there's any number of housing topics as well, such as how old are the homes? What's the median home value? How many households have access to the internet? And as I said, it's disseminated, it's released as 1-year and 5-year estimates each year. 1 year for populations of 65,000 or more, and 5 years are for statistics for all geographies down to basically the neighborhood level. The 1 year has a smaller sample size, so it's less reliable than the 5 year. The 5 year have more data going into it, so it's more reliable than the 1 year. The 1 year, of course, is more current, and the 5 year is less current. The 1 year is best used when current data are more important or for analyzing large populations, and the 5 year are best used when precise data are more important or for analyzing small populations. This just shows you the geography hierarchy. It goes from the nation all the way down to the block level. And you can see if you use the API, for instance, you can get data for example, for all counties in the United States, or all census tracts in a state, or all zip codes in the United States. Now, I want to talk about the Census API basics. The Census API is a data service that allows software developers and other users to access public data in a standardized way. It supports mobile and web applications, both internal and external. It drives interactive data visualizations, and it easily connects to statistical analysis software like SAS and R. Its advantages: it easily downloads target variables and geographies, gives you immediate access to the most current data, and there's no need to host data on another server. And there's more data than what's available on data.census.gov. These are the census programs that you'll find in the API. So if you look at the demographic programs, the American Community Survey, decennial census, health insurance from various different surveys, international database, we have population estimates and projections, and then poverty stats from different surveys and programs. Then we have the economic business programs, such as the annual survey of entrepreneurs and the annual survey of manufacturers, business dynamic statistics, county business patterns, the economic census, international trade, quarterly workforce indicators, survey business programs, and then other programs like the planning database as well. This is the developers page. So what you do is when you go to data and maps on the census.gov, you'll see the developers page. And on the developers page, you can access the API. You can request a key. There's no charge for a key. So you can see down here, you can request a key. You can make up to 500 API queries per IP address without a key. So You don't need a key unless you're making more than 500 API queries per day. But if your company uses the same IP address and there's multiple people are using it, then you may want to request a key. You can browse the discovery tool, which I have circled there. That lists several hundred data sets. It gives you descriptions of variables, geographies, and it gives you examples and so on. You can also review updates, and you can share your experiences in the developers forum. So if I go into the discovery tool, the discovery tool gives you data set descriptions. It gives you variable labels and attributes. So you can see down the bottom, variables, supported geographies. It gives you sample calls, and it gives you links to technical documentation as well. Now, building an API request. So you start your data request. All the data requests begin with api.census.gov/data. Then secondly, you add the year and data set name acronym. So here I added 2021 ACS 1. I'm telling it I want the 2021 ACS 1 year. And you could find the data set names by browsing the discovery tool. So if I go into the discovery tool, you can see that it lists all the different surveys and programs. There's literally hundreds, and they're ordered by year. So for instance, if I wanted to go all the way down to the American Community Survey, here's the data profiles, for instance, has all the economic programs as well, population estimates, and the current population survey. And like I said, all the different programs and surveys are in here. So next, the third thing you would do is you begin your variable request. And you always start your variable request with $get equals. So after I told it I want ACS 1 year, then I put $get equals. Then the fourth step would be you add your variables. So here I'm adding, I put name. The variable name provides a geographic name you're using to limit your search. So I'm adding my variables of B19013 001E and then B19013 001M. Those are estimates for median household income in its margin of errors. So the estimate for median household income is E and the margin of error is M. So I'm telling it I want those two variables. And you can find the variables that you want to add to your call by going into the variable list. And you can see that it lists every single, and sometimes it takes a while to load, but it lists every single variable. And you can actually just copy and paste the variables that you want in your call. Close that. Oops. The common ACS variables, the ones I just showed you that I'm using for my example, E for estimate, and then you saw the M for margin of error, and then you'll see percent estimate, which is PE, and percent margin of error, which is PM, and then you have your annotation variables too, such as EA, MA, PEA, and PMA. The fifth step is you add your geography. So here, you see I added my variables, and then I'm putting and for equals state colon asterisk. The state with the asterisk, that's a wild card. I'm telling it I want all states. I could have put 01 for Alabama, or 02, or I could put 01, 02. I would get Alabama and Alaska. But here I want all states. I'm telling it I'm putting the asterisk. And you can find your geographies in the discovery tool. It has all the geographies listed, the different levels of geographies, and then you got the sample calls for all the geographies, all the way down to the state school district unified. So finally, you run your call. And so when I run this call, it returns the URL in a JSON format, which looks like this. So you see what it looks like. It's got a lot of brackets, quotes, and you've got, for instance, Alabama has a 53,913 median household income with a margin of error of $781. And then you save the file and clean it up. You put save as, and then you add .csv to the file name. Then you change the save as type to all files. So here I downloaded Excel as a I downloaded as a CSV, and I deleted the unneeded characters and cleaned it up. So here's what that table what a part of the table looks like. Then you add your whoops, I'm sorry. You can do an API variable call versus an API entire table call. So the top one is just the call that I just showed you. This is for these two particular variables for median household income and its margin of error. You can include 50 variables in the same call separated by commas. This call on the bottom here, that's an API call for an entire table. I'm telling it I want the entire B19013 table. See, the difference is I've added the group function. This just had name. This one has group. So I'm telling it I want the entire table. The group function allows you to get results for an entire table in one API call. So you can either make a call for various variables, or you can make a call for an entire table. And this just shows you some of the different types of tables that you're probably already aware of. We have detailed tables, and then subject tables, data profiles, those are DP, comparison profiles, CP, and then selected population profiles. Now I want to show you a quick, a couple of API demos to pull this all together. So the first one I'm going to do is multiple estimates and multiple geographies using the American Community Survey. So I'm going to say, what is the home ownership rate and median household income across all counties in Tennessee? So I'm going to start this one from the very beginning so you can follow along. So I'm going to go to data and maps, and I'm going to go to developers. Then next, I'm going to go to the discovery tool. And then next, you go to the HTML, this top one here. So now I'm in where all the surveys and programs, like I showed you before. And so I want to use the American Community Survey 2020 ACS 5-year. So instead, I'm going to do Control F. Let's see if I could get, instead of scrolling through all this, And here are the 5-year data detailed tables. I want the 5-year, I'm going to use the 5-year data profiles. So the first thing you do is you go to examples. So I said I want all counties in Tennessee. So you notice here's county, and then you look which call is the one you want in the county. So for instance, this one's for all counties in the United States. I don't want that. This one's for all counties in all states. And then this one's for a specific county in a specific state. So I know I could use this middle one here, and I could tell it, I could change the asterisk for Tennessee. So I'm going to copy that call. And then I'm going to put it into a new browser. And I don't need a key. So the first thing I'm going to do is take that and your key goes here off. The next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to tell it I want Tennessee. So I know Tennessee is 47, the state code. So I'm going to put 47 into that call. So now I've got my geography set. I got all counties in Tennessee. So the default variable is DPO2. That's a selected social characteristics, probably a population variable. That I don't want that variable. So for now, I'll leave it in, but I'll take it out when I put my own variables in. So I want median household income and home ownership rate. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go into variables. And I'm going to scroll through the variables to find median household income, which I know I can find in the economic data profiles, which is DPO3. So, whoops. So here is DPO3 0062 PE, median household income. So that's what I want. So I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to go back to my call and I'm going to put it in after the comma. Then I could take out that other one that was in there by default, and I'll put a comma because I know I'm going to put another variable in there for home ownership rate. So I'm going to go to the DPO4 selected housing characteristics data profile. And I'm going to look, let's see. It's DPO 46 PE. So you see this is percent owner occupied housing units. So that's what I want. So I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to go back to my call and I'm going to paste that into the call. So now I've got my two variables in that I want, and I got it for all counties in Tennessee. So I'm going to run the call. And you could see that this is the results of the call. It has some annotation values in here. And I would download this call. I would do the save as I showed you, as I talked about before. You could save as and .csv and then change it to all files, and then you'll get it as a CSV. So that's how to do that call. I'm going to go back. So now I want to show you how do you get an entire table using the group function. So I'll show you how do I download the housing demographic profile table DPO4 for all states. This is a little bit different. I'm going to go to the developers page, but this time I'm going to go to all available APIs. And I'll show you why I'm doing this in a second, instead of into the discovery tool. So I want the American Community Survey 1 year, because I want it for all states. And you see it gives you the different types of tables, variable changes, geography changes, your annotation variables. And then you've got your different tables. Detailed subject, data profiles, comparison profiles. I want the data profile. But the reason I went to this page instead of right into the developers page is because the calls on the developers page that I did before, those are calls for single variables. Notice that this call here, this example call, is a call for an entire table. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to copy it like before, and I'm going to go into a new browser. And I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to take off, first thing you do, and your key goes here. And I know I said I wanted the DP04, so I'm going to change that to the DP04. So now it's set with the exception of the geographies for the United States. So I want to change that geography for all states. So I'm going to go back in to the examples and supported geography. I'm going to go into examples, and then I'm going to look for all states. So I see here, this one is for all states. I'm going to copy only the part of that call, that's the geography part. So I'm just going to copy and for state, for equals state. I'm going to go back to my call, and I'm going to take off this and for US, and I'm going to paste that, get rid of that, and your key goes here again. And then now I'm set. I got the DP04 for all states. And I'm going to run the call. And you can see it's very big because the DP04 is pretty big, and for all states makes it a lot bigger. So that's how to do an entire table. And then one last one I want to show you is the economic data. I'm going to use county business patterns. I'm going to show what are the total numbers and employment sizes of all business establishments in Davidson County, Tennessee. So basically, I want the employment sizes of businesses in Davidson County. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, and this is a little tricky to find, but it's county business patterns. I think it might be after the CPS. Decennial census post. Maybe I passed. Oh no, maybe not. Let's see. Oh, I'm in 2021. Let me see. Maybe it's before the CPS. It's right here. Okay, here's county business patterns. And I'm going to go into examples. So I want the I said for Davidson County. So I'm going to look for the one for county, and I can see here this one's for a specific county and a specific state, and I can change that. So I'm going to copy that one. Let's make sure I get the right one. Copy. I'm going to paste it into a new browser. Take off, and your key goes here. So And I don't want all this extra stuff either. So I'm going to take off, because this is the legal form of the business and different stuff like that. So I'm just going to the basic call. So what I want to change first is I want to change the state to 47 for Tennessee. And I want to tell it I want Davidson County. So I know that's the county code is 037. And then now I got to change my variables. So I probably want establishments, but I'll take out all the variables that were in there already. So I'm going to go back and get my variables. And you go in the variables. So I want the employment sizes. So right here, emp sizes. I know I want that. I'm going to paste that into the call. And then I'm going to put a comma. I'm going to go back, and I want the label of the employment sizes. And sometimes when you run a call and you don't see, and you're not getting the output you want, you can go back and kind of play with it and to get what you want. So I got emp sizes label, and finally I want the number of establishments. So here's the number of establishments. So I'm going to go with estab. I'm going to paste that in. So basically I got the number of establishments and the sizes of them, and I've got Davidson County in my call, so I'm ready to run that call. And you could see, for instance, with less than 5 employees, there's 9,665 establishments. And then all the way to 2,500 to almost 5,000 employees, there's 5 in Davidson County. So basically the call I just ran, here is what's in data.census.gov with the same data. So I said there was 9,665 for less than 5, and here's the 5 for the very large ones, establishments. So now I just want to talk briefly about some resources for learning more. The benefits of the API, you can get the exact variables and geographies that you need. You can easily update API calls to get data across years. Most of the variables are consistent from year to year. The API has more historical data than does data.census.gov. So actually the pre-2010 ACS, for instance, is not in data.census.gov. It's in the API. The limitations of the API, you can only do one geographic summary level at a time. And we don't have all the collections of the geographies available in the API. For example, you can't do all tracts in the United States. You can get data in bulk using data.census.gov, or you can use our FTP sites. You can usually, when you run a call, you can usually update the year in your API call to get data over time. So most of the variables are consistent from year to year, but be sure to check for possible changes. You see this top call, that's a call. I'm telling it I want DPO2 0015E, which is average household size. So this is an example of, you see in 2018, household size was 15E. In 2019, household size got bumped down to 16E. So if I would have changed the year in this top call, thinking I'm getting an average household size, I would get a completely different variable. So it's something to be aware of. Sometimes there are variable changes, so just changing the year, just be cognizant of what the output is and check your variables. I think because over the years, especially with the data profiles, they add a variable or they change a variable and it pushes the variables down. So what was one line now is the next line. So finally, data dissemination and training. You can go to census.gov/academy. You could request a free data training. You can receive our data gems. Those are short how-to videos. They're very good. You can get access to our courses. You can learn at your own pace with these video tutorials. You can interact with our instructors via our webinars. You can learn about data releases and tools while attending their live virtual classes. And you can get in touch with us. There's my contact information and my email. Or you can get there's a Census Ask Data at census.gov, and you could subscribe to Census Academy at census.gov/academy. And thank you. That's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Tim, for that presentation. That gives us a really good starting point for this, for using the API. Turn my camera on here. So I did want to start off, if you could, we do have two things to mention. First is in the you can use the Q&A button at the top of the Teams window to ask a question. I think we have, the chat's not on, but the Q&A tab is, so you can ask questions there. We've got a couple in there from Rob Schiffer. But if you have other questions, feel free to throw those in there right now. I did want to ask you one thing though. Could you expand a little bit more when you say that there's more data available through the API than is available through data.census.gov? Is it more tables, more years, more additional types of data? What all can you see through the API that you might not be able to see through the website?
Well, there's a lot of different. Well, there's of course more. Like I said before, there's the pre-2010 ACS. It's not in data.census.gov, it's in the API. And also all the other surveys, such as like the current population survey, all that data is not in data.census.gov, it's in the API. And you got your economic, you got time series data as well for your mainly for economic programs. That's in the API, which is not in data.census.gov. So there's a lot of, and also the older, I want to say some of the older data as well from different surveys and programs.
Okay, so we'll go to the first question that Rob asked. Sounds like Rob's had a little bit of trouble getting an API key. And I don't know that we can necessarily troubleshoot that on webinar here, but if someone does have an issue getting these types of, getting something set up with a key and they need to get one, is there like a help desk or some way, some sort of support that they can contact? Is that you, or is there an email or a phone number they can call to get that?
There's the ACSO users group, or the ACSO. I believe there's a link on the ACS web page. The ACSO, or you could reach out to me, because we get those. I'm part of that group, and we get those requests that people are having problems with the key. So yeah, either or. If you don't reach out to ACSO, you could just email me and say, "Hey, Tim, I need help with the key."
I'll say too, I think there's a Slack channel that's pretty active. That covers the API and making these types of calls, and there are census people that are on those Slack channels that watch that. So you can also interact with people there. Okay, the next question, again, if you have a question, feel free to throw it in the Q&A, and we'll let people unmute here in a second, maybe for a minute or two if there are any questions. But the next question that Rob asked is, and I don't know if you'll be able to field this one or not, Tim, but I can take a crack at it if not. But Rob asked, why would you want to use the API to access ACS data when you can get it through CTPP? And CTPP, I believe, is the Census Transportation Planning Package. Are you familiar with that data?
Vaguely.
Yeah, I'm kind of vaguely familiar with it as well. I think if I was going to answer that, I would say one is not everyone has access to the CTPP data as far as I know. But two, I think the key thing about the ACS, and feel free to weigh in on this, Tim, is that this would, the API allows you to access this data for use inside statistical packages, whether it's Excel, Stata, R, whatever it is that you like to use. Even Randy Pullen will show us how to do it with ArcGIS. So you still need you might want to use an application to access this API data in some way, but I think that would probably be one of its primary benefits. Okay, are there any other questions? If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand in the Teams app, and we'll call you out there and let you ask your question directly to Tim. We'll give that just a second for anybody that wants to do so. Audrey.
Hey there, I was just wondering if you'd be sending out the slides, because I don't think I can remember all of this.
Yeah, I can send the slides to you, Tim, and you can send them.
Okay,
Thank
so as a follow-up, we'll get the deck from Tim, and we will post that on our website and put a link to that in the follow-up email that goes out with that. So thanks for asking that.
And one thing with the slides too, there are a lot of on some of those slides that I did, you can't see the links, but they're there.
We'll yeah, hopefully between the recording and the slides and the offer to follow up if anybody needs help, we can get people taken care of. Any other questions? Anyone want to raise their hand, ask a question? Oh, wait, there's a new post up here. Tim, can you see the chat there? Or the Q&A?
No, I cannot.
All right. So this is a question from Eric Selden. I'll kind of read this in real time here. I work for a small business and we were looking at different counties in Tennessee and Kentucky to potentially expand. Wondering if there are resources or webinars to help which counties or areas are best, population growth, etc. So let's start with that one. Tim, what are the other census applications that might help a small business owner doing research about a business sector, look into some of the questions he's asking?
Yeah, there's I mean, right off I can think of Census Business Builder would be a good one. That uses all that economic data as well as the American Community Survey data, and it's on a map interface. And so you could, for instance, look at whatever, you could look at population, of course, and all the ACS variables and different things like that, like median household income. And you could set filters and only show, like median household income over 50,000, those at a county level. You can even go down to the tract level. So, and it would show you, all the business information as well. So how many other businesses are already in those counties, for instance? How many businesses are like mine? If I want to expand into those counties, are they already saturated with those businesses? That type of thing. You can also use data.census.gov, for different ACS and economic data as well. Those are the two things I could think of off the top of my head. I don't know if you have any other you want to add.
I was going to say Census Business Builder was probably a pretty good tool. It was designed for essentially doing this exact kind of research. I think the nice thing that it does is it synthesizes lots of different types of survey data and brings it into one place so you can see it without having to know about all the different programs. So I think you kind of mentioned the employer side. It may actually have some data on the employee side as well, as far as occupations.
Yes.
And such.
Yeah.
So pretty powerful set of data. And then I think Eric's follow-up question is a question a lot of people are asking, especially out in West Tennessee with the Blue Oval program. His question is kind of understanding the impact of the U.S. battery belt plant expansions. I don't know that we can specifically address that, but I will say I'm asked that question. I was just asked that question last week as it relates to our population projections. As far as the state data center is concerned, and specifically the Boyd Center for Business and Economic Research and the population projections that we're producing, we're kind of going to have to wait to see how things build out before that will start to reflect in our data. but there's a lot of people looking at that. So, and a lot of people that are curious about it, but I don't know that I've got a really good answer to help Eric there. I don't see, I think we've got all the questions out of the Q&A. Thanks for your questions, Eric and Rob. Anyone else want to raise your hand before we switch to our flash presentations? Okay. All right. I'm going to share my screen. So we're going to tee up our next presentations. I'll start off with one. Then we're going to have Randy Pullen, who's sitting in a training class over at the Mount Juliet Holiday Inn Express with all the travel demand modelers in the state, and then Aubrey Weiland, who's just down the river from me at Knoxville-Knox County Planning. She'll go after Randy. So let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully y'all can see me there. I'm going to show you how I use, oops, sorry about that. I'm going to show you how I use the API and specifically how I integrate it with Microsoft Excel and a tool that's embedded in Microsoft Excel called Power Query. So Tim showed you a lot of how to get the sample call and get started building that information. And I'm going to do something similar to him, and I'm going to look at a couple of things related to educational attainment and then also the median household incomes. Now, I've tried to kind of shortcut this because we're trying to do these quick, but one of the ways that is kind of quick and easy way to get some of the variable numbers out that I like to use, and when you have a small table, is if you just look at this table number B15003, if you start from the top, the way that the data.census.gov interface works is this is variable 001, 002, 003, 004, and so on. So if you stick an E behind it, that will give you the estimate number. Another way that I really like to use is the ACS table shells. So if this will give us a unique ID actually right in Excel, so you can go through and look at these and build that fairly quickly. So there's a lot of different ways to get at these variable names, but that's kind of a couple of the shortcuts. So I've constructed an API call here. The only thing I want to note is I've removed the name variable from the sample call. And that's because the name includes some additional commas, which make it kind of difficult to parse apart the information that we get back. So I'm going to copy this URL. And I'm just going to start a new Excel window. Now inside Excel, what I'm going to do is I'll go to the data tab, and then I'm going to say get data from web. That's the button up there. I'm going to paste in my call. And this will open the Power Query window. Power Query is included in Power BI and also Excel. The code that it creates kind of for you is reusable between those two, so you can go back and forth between them with that. But essentially it's an extraction, a transform tool that can be used to load data into those two software packages. So it brought back some JSON. It sees it as a list, I think in part because it had those brackets that were surrounding it. So we're going to convert that to a table. I'm going to expand that table to extract the values that are in that list. And I'm going to tell it that there are some commas there. Now I can kind of see the data that's coming back from that API call. You'll note that the first row has our column headers, so we'll get those out in a second. So the next thing I need to do is I'm going to split this up using that comma delimiter. I'm going to say split this column by the delimiter, and at each occurrence of a comma, I want it to make a new column. So this is going to split all the data out into a usable table for us. The next thing that I can do with Power Query is I can say use the first row as headers. That'll promote that first row. And then over on the side, I want you to see that every time I do something with Power Query, it's recording the steps and the configurations of that steps. Now that that is actually essentially writing some code for us that we can modify and reuse. We can add additional things to that, but we can also reconfigure these steps, delete them, change them, and that sort of thing. One of the things that it just did right there automatically is it detected a field type. And for me, an issue with that is it set these FIPS codes as whole number types, and oftentimes you'll know that these have a leading 0. So I'm going to change those back to text type, which is the census schema. I'm going to replace that current step. So I've got those set up. I like those over on the left side of the table. So I'm going to move those over to the beginning of the table so they look a little bit more like what I'm used to. This was my median income column, so I'm going to, I'll just rename that median income. And I could also go through and rename, this was the total number of people over age 25. And then these other columns were my bachelor's, master's, professional, and PhD or higher. I guess you can't go higher than that, but anyway. So there's that data. Again, it's keeping track of everything that's going on over here. So next I'm going to add a column to this. And I'm going to calculate the number of people with a bachelor's degree or higher as a percentage of all people that are over age 25. So I'll just do that by opening a parentheses. I'll put in my bachelor's, master's, my professional degrees, my PhDs. I'll close that parentheses, and then I'll divide that by all the people that are over age 25. And I'll rename this column that I just created percent bachelor, something like that. Sorry about spelling. Okay, so it's added that column for me over on the side. One thing I maybe should have done here before I did that, there are some instances where there are no households, so that'll create a divide by 0 situation. I could filter them. I also could, let's see, I also could, oh, sorry. Here. Let's see, I also could right click on those and I can remove the errors. I didn't do it. I forgot how I was gonna do that. Well, anyway, it's not a big deal. I should have probably dealt with the divide by 0 beforehand. The other thing is we've got these annotations here where there's no households or just very few households, and those get suppressed. So I can filter those. Then I'm just going to clean this up a little bit, delete these extra columns since I've already done my calculation on it. I'll just say remove those columns. Maybe I'll change this to a percentage type column. And I'll go back to the home tab and hit close and load. So I've got a table in Excel now. I can use it like any other table I've ever created, just to show you how this is actually working. So I can delete all the data that's in there, but I can go back and I can hit refresh, and it will rerun that call. So I can reuse that data over and over. So this is especially useful if data changes on a regular basis. So the last thing I want to do is I'm going to just go back into this query one more time, hit edit. And what I wanted to ultimately find was census tracts that had the highest percent of people that with a bachelor's degree or higher in Tennessee. And I just want to get just the top 10 so I can create a list to maybe put on a website or something like that. So I'll do this next. I'll say I'll sort descending, so I get the highest values first. And then this is the extra column, so we'll just get rid of it too. So now I have them sorted in a descending order. And then I'm just going to use this keep rows button over here. I just want to keep the top rows, and it's going to ask me how many. So I'm just going to keep the top 10 values in that list. I'm going to close it, load it. And now I have a query that's worked against the API to return the census tracts in Tennessee with the highest percentage of people with a bachelor's degree or higher and the median income of those census tracts. So that's just a real quick demo of Power Query. We use it almost, I use it almost exclusively to extract census data at this point. I use the Census API and Power Query. There's other tools that you can use with statistical packages like maybe Tidy Census. If you're using R, there's probably others out there. But I guess whatever works for you is the most important thing as far as the API is concerned for me. All right, that's the end of my short flash demo. I'm hoping that Randy's with us and he can share his screen and start his presentation. Hey, Randy.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me here. Everybody can hear me?
We got you.
Okay. All right, we'll just start here. This came about after I attended one of the API seminars just like this, and developed a tool to pull the data into ArcGIS Pro. So from the GitHub website, just come down here and download the zip file. Open that. Extract it. Then from ArcGIS Pro, come in and add a toolbox. Refresh that. Okay, let's see. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and add a map frame in here so we can see what it does. Basically, the tool combines a web scraper with the Census API with the ArcPy library. And right now it only works with selected years, but you can select the year and then the state. The drop downs help you populate the other drop downs. And so then it goes in and it's going to scrape the state information from a census website, give you the name, the FIPS, the code. So we could go down here and do Tennessee. And then once you've got that, it goes to a different website that the census also hosts, and it pulls out all the counties. And you can select either all the counties or individual counties, whichever you prefer. Add those in. And we've seen this page before, but then it'll go and it lists all of these different there we go. Variables. So the variable names will become the field names here. And then it actually has a descriptive name. The descriptive name is a combination of the concept plus everything in the label that is after the estimate and the total. There are a few instances where this descriptive field name is longer than the field name allowed by the ArcGIS software. And in that case, the concept is dropped and it will just go with the label. And then if the label is too long, then you actually just go back to the name. But you'll always have that name there with the with your output. So we can just select a few of these here. And then we can drop down and get the female to add that in. You have an option whether to use the field aliases or not. In instances where all the records that are returned are null, it will drop that from your table. And here I mean null very specifically. It's when there's not a value in there. Sometimes you may see like negative 555 million. It will still read that as not a null. You can select this if you would like to include the margins of error in your output. And here, if you don't select the trite geometries, the output will be a standalone table inside the FileGeo database. But we can include the geometries. And then the name. Run. So if you want a little more details, there are some messages if you click the view details. And now it's constructed the call to go out to the Census API and pull in that data. All right. Actual information on your variables there. We're just waiting on that.
We're given the Holiday Inn Wi-Fi workout this morning.
But it's running, so I'm happy.
This is the
Danger of the live demo.
on. This is the tightrope you walk on when you do a live demo.
Yes.
It is typically quite a bit faster than this, is what I'll say.
All right, it actually ran. So I'm just going to close that. And now it's got to write all the output, a lot of things it does in memory. But it's, well, we're just waiting on this to run. It's pretty amazing what you can do with the API. There we go. And when you open up this table, everything is in here. The data are sorted based upon the GeoID. And you get everything you get when you normally download the shapefile, but then everything else that you just loaded. I'm going to hover over this. And you can see like there's the actual field name, but that is the alias. And it just makes it a lot easier. If you want to go back to your tool, you can change things. If you wanted to try to run it for 2020. And I guess I'm learning things too. I saw a slide in there about how some things change a little bit between years. So maybe more, but this one tells you that it's not going to work because some of those variables are not available for 2020. And while we're on this screen, this provided links to each of the variables, but there's a bug. These links work, but you have to go from the catalog view. If you click it here, it will crash ArcGIS Pro. But if you click here and then go to the metadata, and scroll down, they're right there. So just easy reference. And you can find what you're looking for there. If you select the all counties option, it's actually quite easy to just go between different states, just change your state and you're good to go. We're typically getting data from both Tennessee and Georgia. Rename your output, hit it again, and you can go. And that's really it. So hopefully I can put under 5 minutes.
It's an awesome tool. It's all right. We were a little bit ahead of schedule anyway. So I did want to point out that I threw the information about Randy's tool and where to get it into. We have an article up on our website, so you'll be able to get information there about where to find it on GitHub. And then I think also I'd probably recommend that you subscribe to him on GitHub in case there are updates that are pushed out in the future or enhancements. So this is a great tool, and I really appreciate you taking some time to share it with us, Randy.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Aubrey, are you ready?
I sure am.
All right, we want to welcome Aubrey Weiland here. She's also has the distinction of being one of the few people who has nearly crashed the Census Bureau's API with this website. So congratulations and welcome, Aubrey.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Academy. I will go into some details about how that happened at the end, so you can avoid getting an email from the Census Bureau with your name on it. So this is my 5-minute demonstration of the tool that temporarily broke the Census Bureau, just for a day. Okay. Sorry, Tim Sarko. So anyone here who has a lot of data requests from the public knows that very few people care to learn how to navigate the data.census.gov website. So to help our local citizens, we use the API to create a tool that they can access from our website that will answer a lot of those frequently asked questions that they used to call us for. It frees up a lot of our time. So in this tool, let me expand all of these prompts. Users will write a query in just 3 steps. So they'll just select a data set, easy, select their geographies, whatever they want. And I actually counted this morning, and if I did this in data.census.gov, it would take at least 6 steps just for the geographies. And then they pick a topic. So we've curated a list of some of those topics that people tend to contact us for. We have the data profiles that most of us are familiar with, and then detailed tables. We've curated it down to some of the more commonly asked for questions. And then once you run it, the user selections will populate a table that starts off collapsed, so you can scroll to whatever you're looking for pretty quickly, or you can show it all at once. You can export it to a CSV very quickly. Hovering over options will show you the margin of error, so it's not crowding the visual field, but it'll tell you exactly what variable you're looking at, what the margin of error is, what the location is. It also highlights the row that you're on and the cell, which can be helpful for people with dyslexia or anyone who is looking at a big table with small numbers. And then there's a lot of other nice features that you can pull up. If you click on one of these, it'll actually show a time series of all the years of data that we have for it. And you can see what the label was for that field. So you can make sure that you're looking at the same variable over time. Yeah, there are a lot of other nice features. One that I can't take credit for, but I'm most excited about probably, is if you're using Google Chrome, you can translate it to another language and it'll download in that language. Whereas if you do that on data.census.gov, it doesn't do that. It'll still download in English. And then on to what happened last month with the Census Bureau. So I wrote it down. We actually cache the data from the API, which isn't necessary. You can definitely do it live. We were having some timing out problems when we first started off. It was a couple of years ago when we started building this. So we had to end up caching all of the data. And whenever a new vintage is released, we update it manually by querying each table with all the geographies all at once and cache it just in one go, one table at a time. And so when the 2021 one-year data came out, I was updating the database and the API kept timing out and timing out. And then I got an email from Jessica Barnett at the Census Bureau informing me that we were taxing the API system to the point of failure. So we had to figure out what exactly was different because we'd done this for 2 or so years now. And it was because our MSA GeoID had actually changed in the previous year, and our workaround was to query all of the MSAs all at once, which is hundreds of GeoIDs. So we changed that, and so now we're a couple hundred geographies shorter in our URIs, and hopefully we'll also be friends December 8th when I start downloading again.
Well, I hope so too. I think Aubrey and Zillow are one of the few people who have managed to do what she did. So congratulations in that regard, but also it's a really impressive website. And I just now for the first time saw that you had the time series feature. So that's that was a really good demo. So We've got about 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left precisely. If there's anybody that has a question for any of the flash demonstration speakers, which is myself, Aubrey, or Randy, feel free to raise your hand, unmute, or put a question in the Q&A. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask or want to raise their hand and ask a question? Throw a compliment. So I'll start with Randy real quick. Any ideas for future enhancements of your tool?
Yes, would like to get it to work with more than just the 5-year estimates. That's the first thing we're going to do. And then after that, I'd like to be able to go back earlier than 2014.
What's the break at 2014 that gave you?
Some of the variables change. Some things aren't GeoID anymore. The URLs are a little different to construct. So it can be done. I just have to spend more time with it.
Great.
Get that.
Aubrey, any more plans for your tool or any other things on the horizon that people might want to know about?
Well, I'm sure it surprises nobody here that once this started working, people wanted to add everything to it. So population estimates, decennial census, they want it all. So potentially in the future, we'll have a separate tool for each of them. Originally, they wanted to just smash it all into the American Community Survey Explorer, and I said no. So in the future, we might make one for others.
Yeah, applications work well when they're small, tidy,
Yes.
and contained. They can get unruly pretty quick. So that's a lesson for anybody else out there that's working on developing applications. All right, well, we're 2 minutes ahead of schedule, but it doesn't look like we have any other questions come in. So I did want to thank Tim Sarko for doing his presentation this morning. Also want to thank Aubrey and Randy for doing their presentations. We'll be following up with an email that will include links to some of these resources, slide decks, videos, and that sort of thing, and also an invite to join us on November 29th for a population estimates webinar. So I'll stand here for a second. If anyone else has any other questions or anything like that, feel free to stick around. Otherwise, hopefully we'll see you soon online. Take care. Bye. All right.